All right, New York Giants are up next. They start with Deontay Banks, the cornerback out of Maryland, at pick 24 in round 1. Round 2, they get Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota, guy that I was mocking for them at pick 25.
Right. Another one of those teams.
That's right. Jalin Hyatt, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, they get him in the 3rd. Running back Eric Gray from Oklahoma in round 5. A couple other day 3 picks in there again for the Giants. But those top 3 picks, Sam, really interesting because, we could say this about a lot of players, but all 3 of those picks have at least seen their name in a first-round mock draft over the last couple months. So Banks in the first round, get an athletic corner. I think they have Michael Schmitz who could step in immediately at starter, at center, and then Jalin Hyatt, speed receiver in round 3. The Giants, this offseason and this draft, have absolutely gotten faster. I'll say that, with Hyatt, with Banks. But interesting draft for them, especially with 3 players who were projected to go higher at least at some point.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Michael Schmitz is the sort of standout, obvious value from that. We were putting him in the first round. We weren't alone. I mean, the Giants' official Twitter account was asking pre-draft, like, oh, here are the 4 options. Who do you want us to draft? And Michael Schmitz was one of those guys in the first round. So to be able to come back at pick 57 in the second round and still get him after having spent your first-round pick on a guy is incredibly good for them. That's a perfect fit. He can come in, start day 1. We talked about it on the draft show. The question mark for him is athleticism, right? The only reason he's not seen as this consensus first-round center is, does he have the elite athleticism of guys like Tyler Linderbaum or whoever it is you want to put in there? And he doesn't. On the other hand, his tape is littered with the kind of blocks that you need the athleticism to make. Like, the reason you want a center to be really good movement skills is so he can execute that reach block on outside zone, get across a full shade, beat a nose tackle to a gap based off speed. Michael Schmitz does that all the time, at which point it doesn't matter what his 40 time is or what his short shuttle is or any of that stuff, because he's already shown you repeatedly he's able to make that play. So I think that's a great pick for them. Deontay Banks is an interesting one. Incredible athleticism. He's right up there with Christian Gonzalez in terms of prototypical measurables, speed, size, all that kind of stuff. And he's similar to Gonzalez in terms of he's not as good a football player as he is an athlete right now. I think he's closer, though, than Gonzalez is. I think I had him slightly ahead in my rankings, 3rd versus 6th or whatever. And he goes to this defense, the Wink Martindale defense, crazy defense, as Steve has called it every now and again.
Crazy.
That wants to play man coverage. And this is a guy that can absolutely play man coverage. He can mirror receivers. He's got the speed to run with anybody. He needs a little bit of work in terms of putting it all together, but like, that guy can absolutely stick with receivers and play man coverage.
There was I didn't catch it because we were, live on the air covering it, but supposedly there was a live, reaction from Wink Martindale and a big high five or something when they got Deontay Banks. The Giants also traded up 1 spot, right, from 25 to 24 to make sure that they got Banks. Mm-hmm. He grew on me a lot. The more I watched, the raw data, the production data for Banks isn't great. The athleticism data is outstanding, and it shows up on the field, right? I mean, I love watching him just glide around the field. So I think definitely a good fit for what the Giants are doing. I liked all 3 picks. The other interesting note from the press conference was about Jalin Hyatt. The media was trying to ask about the scheme and the route running, and they didn't really get into it. They said, hey, we believe he can run the routes that we need to run. We run a lot of the same routes here. The other interesting note was GM Joe Shane was at the Alabama game. That was the one that put Hyatt on the map, 5 touchdowns and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that had the influence on him. They took him at pick 73. It's not that was like the right range. But he was, Shane saying, I was on the field. I couldn't make it to the press box because of certain travel restrictions and all this stuff. And he's like, I could feel the 4.3 speed. I'm always fascinated by how much the in-person evaluation is weighed for people. Like when they're in draft meetings, is everybody like, oh, Hyatt can't do this and he can't do that, and Joe Shane's like, wait, I was on the field, I saw it, he's fast, we should get him. They didn't overdraft him or anything like that, but I'm always interested when people talk about, I was at the game when, and Shane happened to be at the game when he scored 5 touchdowns against Alabama. That has to weigh in your brain from an evaluation standpoint.
Yeah, it's the perfect range for Jalin Hyatt. I think from a value standpoint, it's great. I wonder a little bit how this wide receiver core fits together. They have a ton of these guys that are either slot or speedster only, or a combination of both. And you're like, who's playing outside and defeating man coverage? Now, Jalin Hyatt, we don't know that he can't do that. He simply has essentially never been asked to. Like, the guy's had a handful of snaps against press coverage in his entire college career. He spent the entire time playing inside in the slot, usually off the line of scrimmage, protected by stack formations, all this kind of thing, essentially to tap into what he's able to do really well, which is run deep down the field from the slot. Can he play outside? Can he still get that done on the outside against press coverage and all those kinds of things? No idea. And neither does anybody else. So, but that's where you take it. That's why he's in the third round, not the first round. If you already had a ton of college tape where you could see that he can do that, he'd be a first round player. The fact that we don't know is why he slides as far as he did. But for them, it's good value. We just don't know quite what kind of impact he's going to be able to make. One undrafted free agent that the Giants made that I thought was interesting, they got Bryce Ford Wheaton, the West Virginia wide receiver, who has insane size, athleticism, ridiculous speed. Like, he struck me as a poor man's Quentin Johnston. And I was like, if you could tell me you can get Quentin Johnston in the first round or this guy in day 3 sometime, I would take this guy on day 3 sometime. And he didn't even make it to day 3. The Giants picked him up as an undrafted free agent. So it's not often you see these undrafted free agents with like a real pathway through to playing time, but I think there's one there for Ford Wheaton and the Giants.
Yeah, there absolutely is. I mean, look, a lot of teams have themes and goals in the offseason. I believe the Giants came in and said, we're going to get faster. We have to get faster. I believe they have. Paris Campbell coming in this offseason helps that as well. But a lot of these draft picks, Bryce Ford Wheaton in undrafted free agency, there is a path for him to play. I'm also, with Hyatt in particular, you know me, I love deep threats no matter what. Anybody who could be a deep threat fits in every single offense. But especially offenses that use the QB run game as much. So with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley in the backfield and some of the misdirection and deception that they create there, can they just open up Hyatt just a little bit to give him those free runs and tap into that speed? That's interesting too as a fit, I would say, for the Giants. Day 3, Eric Gray was a really productive running back out of Oklahoma last year, 90-plus PFF grade. He's got a chance to come in and steal some snaps as well. So it was a good draft. I know Trevor loved it, man. A+ for the Giants because, again, you get – if they took Michael Schmitz in the first round, I know that's a reach on the board and stuff like that, but I think production-wise and projection-wise, it would have been fine. It would have been a fit. And you get him in the second, you get Hyatt in the third. I think they just did trust the board and got a lot of good players, particularly in that first couple days.
Yeah. Now, anytime, I mean, any of the teams that essentially got what we thought were 2 first-rounders from a talent standpoint, with, you know, a first and a second round pick, I think you can, they're already on the fast track to an A type of draft, and then as long as you don't screw up the rest of it, I think you're laughing.